Yeah, I think one of the things that we can teach the AI app is to ask one question before anything else. And that would be, what is the number you actually want as a founder?
Yeah.
What do you want? Not the number you think you can justify or you can get. What do you want? And yeah, not the number that they'll say yes to, but the number that you need and want. Most women have never been asked that question directly or cleanly, and everything you build from there is either honest or it isn't.
Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 157. I'm your host, Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and this is the podcast that closes the funding gap in venture capital by amplifying the stories of female founders and their investors. Now, most founders assume that financial independence is the result of an exit. My guest in this episode argues that you need to build it while building your company. Not having enough personal capital while building shapes every decision a founder makes. How you price, which investors you accept, and whether you can walk away from a deal that doesn't feel right. To discuss this, I'm joined by Ana Herrero-Wallace. Ana Herrero-Wallace is a financial independence coach, investor, and founder at ADA Invest. Ana is also the author of the book Still Thinking, Act, Smarter Money for Women. By listening to our conversation, you'll learn why the goal of fundraising is agency, not validation, and what that reframe changes in practice, how to identify the money scripts that are shaping your professional decisions without you even realizing it, and what Anna's 96% investment loss taught her about the psychology of money and why mistakes are part of the process. Plus, Anna shares how unpaid labor has real financial value and why women can negotiate for it to be recognized. So when you're ready to discover how female founders build financial independence before the exit, here's my conversation with Ana Herrero-Wallace. Ana Herrero-Wallace, good morning. Good to have you on Women Disrupting Tech. Usually I start with the question how you got into your current job or current position, but I wanted to start a little bit differently. You wrote a book that I have in front of me called Still Thinking, Act. It's a smarter money guide for women, and it opens with an anecdote about your father, and your father loses his job, and the anecdote is about how you see how it even physically affects him.
Yeah.
Take us back to that moment, and then on the back of that, my question would be, what did it teach you about money and security and being dependent?
Yes. Thank you for asking this question, and it's really the purpose of my book. So yeah, in the lesson that I learned when I was 12 was not really it was about money, but in a different way. Grew up in a middle high class family in Spain and went to private school. My father had a chauffeur. He had a PA. He had an MBA. So things that a little bit quite new back then, having an MBA, and he got that in the 70s. But anyway, he lost everything overnight in his 50s. And I was 12 years old. And I do remember, back then there was no LinkedIn. There was only a newspaper and a phone, and the phone didn't ring. So he was not able to regain employment for many years. Actually, he never did. And his confidence, his ability, or his ability to make money, his ego disappeared. And then he had no agency. So for me, it became kind of a dark moment where my parents closed their door and they didn't really communicate about it. So it kind of caused financial trauma a bit, in the sense that I felt that money was protection, money was security. And I said to myself back then, I will always be, I always have to be independent. I always have to have agency, and I need to control money. And that really made me make many decisions throughout my life that I think can really go back to that moment.
When we spoke before, you said it also created that the experience created a scarcity mindset. How that because you had a career in fintech, in technology and fintech. Um, how has that shaped how you make decisions?
Yes, so absolutely. For many, many years, I've had a scarcity mindset. And what I mean with that is survival mindset.
Hmm.
So, how can I keep accumulating money? How can I keep having the bigger job? How can I keep having the bigger titles? Because I need to survive and putting myself under pressure to
Hmm.
survive and feel valuable. And
Hmm.
in a way, it's a bit addictive. And in a way, you don't know where to stop. So I've done my journey. Now I do feel for the past years that I have a lot of abundance. So from that scarcity to abundance. And I think when you have abundance, then you're much more able to help other people and show them, that there is another way than just survival. And I get it why your mind is trying to do that. But I tell you, it's much better to have an abundance mindset.
How do you?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you switch? Because
Well,
to
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
speaking from my personal experience, that has been quite a journey
Okay.
to not to look at money from a scarcity mindset and really look at like, okay, I need to accumulate, 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 but really look at it like, okay, there's enough for everybody. And
Yeah. So I
how did
think,
you make that change?
yeah, and I mean the feeling that you're having, I hear it from a lot of other people and women, especially, is I think when you have a scarcity mindset, maybe you grew up like that, or you grew up very poor. It could be, um, and then just kind of stays with you. But I think once you have clarity and you have a plan, first you need to have a plan, and then you have to really understand where you are financially now and where you want to be. And then realize, okay, I need to accumulate, you know, this sort of assets, and assets are going to be the ones that are working for you, and you're not having to show up at work to make
Hmm?
money. And once I think you have that clarity and transparency, you're much more able to say, no, you know what, I have enough. And I think for me, unfortunately, what happened with my scarcity mindset, which changed at 12, is and it was not just with money, but it was also with love, and it was also with friends. So it kind of went to many, many places. And now that I have this abundance mindset, I feel that I have enough friends, not even enough, like I have a lot and I can still have more, or I have a lot of love, and also love for yourself. I think that's also important. But I also have enough money. And, now I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working in corporate for 20 plus years with a good salary. So then, how come I'm also changing my life now all of a sudden, and kind of trusting the process? As an entrepreneur, in the beginning you're not really making money, and how am I trusting myself to continue to do this, right? And so,
Yeah, is it also about because what I'm hearing you say is a bit like once you become an entrepreneur,
yeah,
like if you're getting an regular paycheck, life is quote unquote relatively easy. But once you are an entrepreneur, you need to start thinking of yourself, but also thinking of yourself in terms of self worth, self love. So, does that also becoming an entrepreneur, did that help you to shift to an abundance mindset?
absolutely. But I think I'm not sure which one came first. So I think the worth came first, and the worth is I have what I call the wealth framework, W for worth. I think worth is very important. What you feel that you are worth. If you don't feel that you are worth enough, then you're not really taking the risk. So I
Hmm.
think the worth came maybe before, and then the entrepreneurship came later. As a matter of fact, in 2019, I already started a startup to help women with their financial journeys, with their financial journey and clarity. And I stopped it. Whilst it was successful, I stopped it because I wasn't like, my God, like I'm not making that much money, and I was making a lot of money. So I'm not sleeping at night. So I'm just gonna make sure that I get employment again. And that was 5, 6 years ago. Now I'm doing the same, but I'm doing it with a different framework. And of course, Dirk Jan, I also created a much better financial plan for myself where I have more assets and I feel I'm more secure financially to do so. But my mindset has changed. And of course, you have age as well, right? Which I think it helps.
How does that help? Age or life
Well,
experience?
yeah, and I don't know how it is for men, but definitely for women, um, I do feel that we've become more confident. And we actually don't care what other people think. We become more vulnerable, which is actually a hard one for me. So I put a lot of layers,
Yeah.
which I'm taking away year over year. And I remember around, I don't know, 6, 7 months ago, I spoke to my mentor about, hey, should I publish this on LinkedIn or not?
Hmm.
It is very scary, it's gonna burn bridges. People are not gonna like it. And now I just publish without really caring. And not we all care, right? But the layers of really worrying about what everyone else is thinking has diminished quite a bit.
Yeah. I want to touch on that a bit later. I want to go back for a minute to the prep call we had because you said something else that really stuck with me. Uh, you do things not to lose, but you never play to win.
Hmm,
Is that something that is changing?
completely. That was a beautiful friend of mine, Joanna, told me.
Yeah, and because my question was going to be, how did you find out for yourself, and what did it do mentally when you heard Joanna say that?
So yeah, my friend Joanna Lehman told me that. And she kind of saw the layers that I had, and she kind of said, wouldn't it be better if you just played to win instead of playing not to lose?
Uh-huh.
And then I understood what it meant, and I started doing that. So starting really networking with people that I felt were, um, how would I say, like higher than me or superior
Yeah.
to me or more successful. And then realizing, hey, they really like me and I'm learning a lot from them rather than just settling and having lower standards for myself. So that raising the standards, which in a way you think, okay, maybe people are going to reject me, taught me that, you know what, I'm really worth it. And this is working out. And then you just attract better people. And you're also being more genuine and happier because you're hanging out with people you like better, doing things that you're more passionate about, which is what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm definitely playing to win because the playing not to lose would be for me to just go back to tech, which is what I've been doing for quite a bit of years successfully.
Because
So,
there you know what to expect.
and it's comfortable. It's very comfortable, right? And then, yeah, you get good package and you get your stocks and you get your things, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and then then life is easy, but then
Life is easy. And I don't think it's a bad life at all. I loved my jobs so far. But I also want to, I mean, another thing, Jan, maybe we didn't mention it, is I had three of my three close friends with breast cancer last year. And I thought, okay, if I don't write the book, which I've been wanting to do, if I don't do this, we think we're going to live until we're 90. And it could be that that doesn't happen. So I might as well take those risks. I need to be playing to win. And worst case scenario, Jan, I don't succeed and I learn something from it. And then I will just be a better person, whether I go back to corporate or I do a hybrid or I just keep being an entrepreneur.
yeah.
And don't forget, I'm already an entrepreneur for many years. I'm an investor, been investing since I was 23 in the stock market, have real estate since 2016. So that is already there.
So in this conversation, I want to touch on three themes. One of them, the first one, is actually a money mindset and also how it shapes, let's say, behavior of people and more specifically for my audience, founder behavior. So many of the founders I talk to are fundraising or have been fundraising or will be fundraising in the near future. Um, and or they're launching a product and they need to price that. And they see that as a sort of strategy. From what I understand from your philosophy, it's that it's also about money mindset and how your relationship with money is and how that the way it shows up in life. So how does that influence? How does the money mindset? I think that's the first question I should ask. So how does someone's relationship to money show up in how people do pricing, raise capital, or negotiate?
Yeah, and this comes from examples of women that I speak to. Some
Hmm.
of them have grown up, let's say, in environments where the parents got divorced because of money, or there was a lot of arguments about it. So then they might feel that when they bring up money, they associate money with conflict. So
Hmm.
maybe it's not something that they don't want to negotiate, or they are underpriced themselves because, hey, they'll be more willing to say yes for my product, or I'm not going to fundraise. So I think that they link money with unworthiness, and that will underprice them. So yeah, and it's sometimes they feel like, okay, if I will only raise my prices once I prove myself, or once I have all the information, or once have all the education.
Hmm.
Um, and then they are, yeah, it's really not a recipe for success, and it's not very strategic.
So why is it not a recipe for success?
Well, it's I think it's a little bit of time compounding, right? So if you keep waiting for the right moment
Hmm.
when everything is perfect, and then I will
Hmm.
ask for the money, or I'll ask for what I'm worth, or what this product is worth, time just keeps going by, just like the same as with investments. Time is important and it compounds. And I think, I don't know how much runway they have, but sometimes you don't have enough runway, then you can just keep waiting. So yeah, I think some women are perhaps waiting until the room is ready, the offer is good, and everything is just right there. But for me, it should be about, and it's a bit of the title of the book, Still Thinking, Act.
Hmm.
Stop thinking and overthinking, and then just do it, and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Is that a lack of confidence or is that something else, you think?
I used to think so. I used to think for many years there was a lack of confidence. I used to think that women just didn't know how to negotiate. I used to think, if we just mentor the women, they will get better. And I realize I've been president of PWM Professional Women Network for many years. So I've been around data. And it's really, I don't know what your opinion on it is. There's a lot of, the system is broken for women. It wasn't created for women, and we just have to adapt to it. And I think, yes, of course, maybe some women don't know how to negotiate, so do some men as well, don't know how to negotiate. But I do think it's not a confidence issue. I think it's really a system issue. In a room where it hasn't been built for her, with people that don't look like her, using frameworks designed around a completely different archetype of a founder than a woman. And it's not really a problem of confidence.
Okay. So how do we work around this? Or how do we sort of rebuild that system in a way that it does work for women?
So that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do. If you look at data, for example, in the Netherlands, with the pension fund gap, there's around 30 to 35% less pension for a woman than a man. And that is not due to the fact that uh, the women are the problem, but is really the system which rewards part time work. When you have part time work, you normally are not accumulating as much wealth. And then you find yourself in, a huge gap that, you have. And if you compare that to the Nordics, for example, the wealth gap is only 20 to 25%. And I think we like to talk about the pay gap a lot, but we're not talking about the pension gap. And I think we need to be also reframing that. And for me, I mean, I don't know how I'm going to change this whole system, but we just need to be aware that if we make the decision of working part-time, because it's more flexible because of our life, it will have consequences further on. And furthermore, if we're depending on someone else and not really investing in ourselves and our wealth, then, we could have problems further.
Okay. Can I
Yeah,
know this is not in the script, but
yeah,
I'm now really tempted to ask this anyway. How do
do
you
it.
look at the trad wife,
Trade wife?
traditional wife? So I stay at home and I let my husband take care of me. So I just have children and take care of the house and bake cookies
Yeah,
and post on that about that on Instagram.
yeah. I think I don't have a moral judgment to that,
Huh?
towards that. I don't think it's a little bit like the breastfeeding and the bottle
Mm-hmm.
dilemma. I don't think one is better than the other to work full time or to not work at all. But I think that there are some consequences of not working and not being independent, financial independent, which is you could get divorced, assets are divided, we live longer. How are you going to maintain yourself later in life when you might be sick? But I don't have a moral judgment to that. I do think they're young because I haven't been employed forever, always. And it's so hard. I mean, I still do it. There's so much unpaid labor that we do at home. So it looks like we're doing our nails and going to uh, yoga all day, but that's not necessarily it, right? Like um, getting the house clean, having the mental load that we have of remembering all the kids' schedules, or you know, I've been there, and it's really heavy as well, and we don't get paid for it.
Is that also part of the system that is, let's say, not working for women, that most of the care duties end up being done by women, resulting in unpaid labor?
I think it is part of the system. I think it is part of the system. And my husband, well, my partner is just as capable as I am to take care of the kids. So he hasn't been at corporate all the time. He was doing his own uh, side business as well. And when he wasn't working, he was much more time at home, cooking, doing everything, unpaid labor, right? So there has to be a balance, I think. And one important question is, and this is something that always stayed with me. Warren Buffett said there's the let's say the biggest investor in the U.S., right? Famous Warren Buffett. He said the most important decision you can make in life is who you wish to spend your time with in a sense of partnership. So who's going to be your significant other? And for me, I had been lucky that um, he's a feminist in a way.
Huh?
Um, in a good way, and has supported my career, but also very happily does the duties of the house, which is not supposed to be a women's duty. But yeah, I mean, it is it's a complex subject.
Yeah. So, what can women do to, let's say, at least take care of themselves and and contribute to their own financial independence? And also, how does money mindset help there?
I think it's the most important. One thing is education,
Hmm.
and I think is there is a lot of education out there. There's a lot of videos, books, to be financially aware, and then just maybe asking for what you deserve. So, and what I mean with that is there's when I wrote the book, I interviewed 50 women for the book. And one of
Hmm.
the stories that really resonated with me, which I kept in the book, was the fact this lady, and I call him Michiel in the book. So it's
Hmm.
a man, but it's really a lady. She moved from London to Amsterdam to be with her partner. and he had a huge job in finance, making a lot of money. She left her career in London, came to the Netherlands, learned the language. I mean, just left her career. And then they broke up and they were not married after 8 years. So legally, she wasn't meant to get anything from him in a way, but she actually asked. She was opening her own business. Then she looked at the numbers. She thought, oh my God, like I can't do this myself. And I've been supporting this person for 8 years. And without kids, I do deserve this much. And so she negotiated some amount of money, which she got. And I wish I had known this story before, because it happened to me in my 20s, where I went to another country for someone else and then we broke up. And I was poor. I didn't take anything with me. And I had to rebuild my life. And then I went to London, right? So I wish I had known that you could ask those questions, and that it's unpaid work should also be compensated in some way. So anyway, that really resonated with me. If that resonates with anyone else within the podcast, that would be great.
Okay. So how do you negotiate on let's say, on getting rewarded? Let's say you're taking care of a lot of the care duties at home. How do you negotiate that with your partner? What are questions you can ask, or let's say negotiation tactics you can deploy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, and you have to customize it per couple. What I do is, he specializes in certain things and I specialize in some other things.
Huh?
And then we all know what our duties are. But I do feel like they are quite equal. So I think having that conversation and supporting each other. So, there's some things I do all the time, he does. I do know another couple that I interviewed that actually has an Excel spreadsheet where they put, I know, they put everything, every duty in the house, and then they assign like a rating. So for example, cleaning the toilet is like a 5, which is like the worst. So then they kind of weight average everything and they do equal work. So there has to be something that works for both, right? So I don't know what is the secret formula on that.
Okay. So, but it does start with at least having the conversation, and also preferably having some data around it.
Yeah. Do you remember, Dirk Jan, in Iceland? Iceland is one of the countries, it's not one, it is the country with the greatest parity between men and women of equality. And I think it was in the 70s, wasn't it, that they did like, women protested and they stopped working. So they stopped doing everything in the house. They stopped going to work. And then the men really realized, okay, we really need them.
Yeah,
It's a
they
little bit like
recently
us.
did that again. And
Oh, did they?
actually, they at the time they had a female prime minister,
Yeah.
and she also joined, because she was like, "Hey, we're all on strike today," which was which I thought was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then it was, I don't know if it was really symbolic, because there was a lot of there wasn't a lot of backlash against it, so it was more like 50% of the population is now on strike. So that was more the news part of the story. But it did raise a lot of eyebrows in terms of so we're sort of also dependent the other way. So it's not just men earning the money, but it's also women sort of facilitating that men can earn that money.
Absolutely. And when I was in my last job at Workday running customer success for the Benelux, and my husband wasn't working, my partner, it was great. Like I could come home late, I could go and travel, everything is taken care of, and there's this sort of release and relief. And then he's answering all the WhatsApp from school, and and that I
How
do.
how the,
Yeah,
how did school respond?
yeah, that was a interesting one. So yeah, they normally would send me the message, or if there was a invite for a birthday party, it's normally that I'm included there, but not him.
Hmm?
So then I would always have to add him. And I think now this is how it's reversed, because now I'm the one picking up the kids from school or
Huh?
whatnot. But it used to not be that way. And as a matter of fact, 10 years ago, when I arrived in the Netherlands, I had also a big job at SAP, the software company from Germany. And I was working full time, 5 days a week. But my office was like an hour and a half away, or an hour and 15 minutes. So leave early in the morning, go to the office, and that was pre-COVID, right? So there wasn't so much working from home, and some people didn't react so well in the nursery when I was taking my son to school 5 days a week. So, making comments like, is he okay, your son? Are you okay? And then it was 3 or 4 times that happened to me. So I asked Martin, my partner, hey, do people come to you and ask you, are you okay? Are you stressed? And no one does. So why is it that so I felt like, okay, is there something wrong with me? Have I been a bad mom? How can I do my job? I'm in a new country, new culture, and I'm trying to make it work. And that's actually what got me started to really looking at the data and really becoming a feminist in a good sense. I don't know. I like to call myself a feminist. Sometimes it has different connotations for different people, but because it was strange. I was in London for 10 years, never got that question. Fair enough. Why is it that I'm getting this question now? And that kind of
Did you
switched, yeah,
did you ever ask that particular question?
to
Because
someone. Yeah,
to someone, let's say at the nursery or at the school, because I think part of this particular problem is that many people here don't have the experience from other countries. So they're just
they
looking
think this
like,
is normal,
yeah,
but the data is not showing that. So Netherlands has by far the most part-time working in Europe. So the data is, and I mean, it's so yeah, it is actually sad because I think it is 60% of people in the Netherlands work part-time, women, which is comparison to 20 to 30% in Europe, and it's much less in Southern and Eastern Europe. So it's great that women are working even if it's part time, but the problem again is that pension gap that you have later. So the Nordics work actually full time, much more full time, and there are a lot more. There's a higher rate of financially independent women in the Nordics than there is in the Netherlands. And also, again, the pension gap in the Nordics is 20 to 25%. So the Dutch model looks progressive, but then if you're looking at the data, it's not.
the outcomes are not.
They're not. And then it's like, if I didn't see that data, I wouldn't have written a book for women. I would have just written a book of financial independence because I love that subject despite. But then I thought, okay, I can't stay quiet. I have to help. And the thing also for me, I was never a CEO of a software company, but I still, had a financial assets where I have much more financial independence than many people. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. So I want to move actually to the financial independence theme because that's theme number 2. Why is it financial independence important for women?
Yeah. And when I say financial independence, and it's a bit of a, let's say, new term, I believe, it's not financial independence or retirement early so that I can do nothing and do my
Mhm.
nails or sit in Cancun, but it's more about having enough assets
Mhm.
behind me where I can make more bold decisions. I can have more flexibility in my life, or I can show up at work just because I love the work, but I don't necessarily need the money. And that is what I mean with financial independence. And there's nothing worse than having to be completely dependent, whether that's on an employer, whether that's a partner,
Mhm.
because I think that then you are doing things out of fear and pressure rather than really being yourself.
So again, it's also a way to get out of the scarcity mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also meet a lot of women that make a lot of money and have a lot of assets, but still have the scarcity mindset. So they feel trapped. They don't know that there is another way. They still like,
Do they not know, or do they think that's for somebody else?
maybe it is, they think that it's for somebody else. And only clarity. Yeah.
How do you let them make that shift? Because I think that's really important for people uh, to be able to make that shift.
I think the way you can make the shift is by looking at your numbers and realizing you are okay. Okay, first of all, do I have enough money in an emergency fund? Why do I need an emergency fund? So basically, you calculate how much you spend a month, and you either have an emergency fund of 3 times what you spend a month, or 6 times maybe, or 9 times if you're a solo entrepreneur. So that would depend. Once that is fulfilled, then you can say everything else, it could be investable as long as you don't need it in the next 5 years, let's say. So if you're going to get married next year, if you're going to buy a house next year, then, perhaps just leave it in cash. But, I find women that have maybe 80K in cash, 200K in cash, sometimes when we talk about it, and they feel ashamed and they know it's wrong, but they just haven't really realized what to do with it.
Mhm. So first you need to make, let's say, an inventory of where you are right now.
Yes.
If you have
Yes.
enough emergency funds, if there's any big expenditures coming in the next 1 to 5 years. Let's say there's 50K left on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
How do you proceed from there?
That's good. And then I forgot the most important, which is the psychology of money. So, can you sleep at night if you invest that 50K? How old are you?
Hmm.
What are your short, your medium, long-term goals? Let's say you are young, I mean, you're not like 60, 70, you're young, you have a medium to high risk appetite, or yeah, let's say medium, then you definitely want to invest those funds and let's say the stock market. So I would recommend, a big fund with composed of many stocks, and just let it compound, let's say forever. Long term, you don't look at the news, you don't look at your portfolio every day. The more you look at your portfolio, the worse you're gonna do. The less risk you're gonna take. And there's data that shows this. And then just invest it for the long term. And then, I always say to people, believe it or not, don't think that you're gonna retire at 67. Why don't you try to, let's say, do some early retirement before 67? And how
Hmm.
can you make that work?
Yeah. So if I look at this from a founder perspective, many founders, myself included, I think you yourself included as well, start later in life.
Yeah.
There's actually data that if you're starting as a founder later in life, you're more successful. So how does financial independence then help build a company or a life on the person's own terms?
Yeah. I do think financial independence gives them more room to build.
Hmm.
It gives them more room to build if I see it in my example. And it's one of those underappreciated advantages of starting later, right?
Hmm.
So at this point in my career, or my life, I have more assets, I have more clarity,
Hmm.
and I have a financial floor, So and I've been very strategic about all those things for the last decade. And I have a real structure. So I have a real structure that I built that I don't have to touch. And then whenever I have cash, I just put money there. And that way, and going back to your first question, I'm able to play to win instead of playing not to lose. That way, I'm able to take, let's say, what could be perceived as higher risk. When you have your own company, you have a higher risk.
Hmm.
And yeah, and it and that is the gap that I work with women of how can we build those assets so that you can make those sort of, decisions
Hmm.
later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the decision to start indeed your own business.
Why not? And especially we know I've been in tech, a few companies, there's always layoffs. It's normal, it's structural, it's not personal, even though then somehow it's personal. And yeah, you just have to, rebuild your life over and over again. And if you don't have that financial floor and that financial clarity and that plan, and you haven't been strategic about it, then it's really hard to rebuild.
Yeah. So when you're building a company, at least many people I speak to focus fully on building the company value, but I haven't heard people talk about personal wealth building while
Interesting.
building a company. Maybe the question is how can people start doing that? So in tandem. So
Yeah.
continue building that company because ultimately that's where the let's say most of the value comes from. But
Yeah.
also on the back of that, really either maintaining personal wealth or building it.
Some maybe perhaps some founders where they see their company as a retirement plan. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And then they haven't really thought about their personal plan. And perhaps they never thought about it. But
Yeah, so some start out of university, yeah. So that
that is
then
true.
that's one part of it. But also looking at myself, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to take this as myself. So I really consciously thought about, okay, how am I going to, let's say, build a company while also maintaining a certain minimum base of wealth that I need in the future. But I hardly ever hear people talk about that specific part.
Yeah. And surprisingly, Dikian, it's also corporate women that are not building a financial plan.
Mhm.
So and maybe it's striking for you because a founder that is maybe asking for money and being very confident about that and their numbers is not really thinking about their their personal financial numbers. And maybe that's striking.
Mhm.
But I've also spoken to women that are working in finance at big corporate executives, and they're also not thinking about their personal finance. So I don't know. It's one thing I say, which is very simple, is having a plan or getting a mentor that you pay a fee for, not paying a financial advisor where you're paying a percentage of your assets, which is very expensive.
Mhm.
I don't recommend that unless you have a very, let's say, complex situation. Um, just getting like someone that could help you for a few hours that you pay a fixed fee to create a plan for you, to create a structure, and then making sure that you invest every month, forever, and then let time compound those investments for you. There's also an interesting, I've been hearing this beautiful podcast this morning when I went for a walk about renting versus buying. So I guess with founders also, it's nice to buy a house, of course, but really look at it in a spreadsheet kind of way. And that's how I look at numbers and sorry, not numbers, but money and decisions. It's really unemotional for me, even though there's always the psychology and what the data
Uh-huh.
says. But sometimes if you buy a house and you have too much equity on that, it's not very liquid. So you have too much money in a place and then you can't really invest that money. So consider things that are a little bit against. You have to unlearn things. Hey, maybe renting is okay until I build that business or.
It's liquidity is a big thing, especially if you're building a business. You need that liquidity, especially personally, I think.
Absolutely. And then you can take higher risk. You're not taking customers you don't like. You're not underpricing yourself because you have a bigger buffer, a bigger emergency fund, because not all your money is, let's say, tied into your house, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really powerful also to look at it a bit broader than just um, the general advice is buying a house is better than renting,
Yeah.
which may
And
be true for 90% of the population, but I don't think necessarily founders belong to that 90%. They're more in the 10%
yeah.
anyway.
And there's also opportunities. What if you could buy equity on your own company or like equity on something that is really going to pay you off 10x in the future.
Yeah.
But you're not able to do that now because you just don't have the liquidity, because you're invested in your house because you think it's such a great investment. And it just kind of closes options for you. And if the opportunity is there, then you're not able to take that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson that we can draw from that is that people should really look at their personal financial situation and not be captured by, let's say, modern day one size fits all
Yeah,
financial advice.
absolutely. And the same with expenses, right? If you're an entrepreneur, make sure that, well, everyone, make sure that you're spending money on things that add value and that you love, and
Hmm.
not spend money on everything. Because if you do so, you'll never become wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it is becoming financially independent also something that founders would need to include in their company plans and in their pitch decks. So also in the financial asks they have towards investors.
absolutely. I think it's regardless of who you are and what you're doing, I think it's something that you should be thinking about and being a strategic. So every day you're thinking about, okay, this is the sort of number I need to have enough assets where work becomes optional,
Mhm.
or I can do part-time work, let's say, at that point, because I have enough assets that is giving me cash flow. So it's giving me money. Maybe you have real estate and that is giving you enough money that pays for your bills. Or maybe you have stocks where they pay dividends and you get money from that that is paying part of your bills. And then you can make better decisions, but you have to have that plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to move to the third theme. It's about something we discussed before: perfectionism and overthinking. So people get bombarded with a lot of data and advice on a daily basis. You have to build your business, you have to invest in stocks, you have to also keep a balance in your personal life, which all is true. But it also leads to procrastination on dealing with important topics. You wrote the book Still Thinking Act, which also could be advice to founders. Just do things. But why does when does let's say the just thinking about things, how does it hold you back, and when does it become procrastination versus when is it functional?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't think I was a perfectionist,
Uh-huh.
or at least a little bit, but not so much, until I wrote the book,
Yeah.
where I kept changing it, I kept restructuring it, I kept deleting, I kept adding, and then I set myself a deadline that I would publish March 12th, and I had sleepless nights because I thought my editor wouldn't be able to provide me the copy back in time for my book launch. And I'm very open about it. I know it all sounds like last minute, but I'm glad I had that deadline where I invited my best, buddies, and I felt a little bit ashamed if I didn't have the book with me to sell them over the so that kind of was the deadline. But had
Yeah.
I not had that deadline, I would have kept changing the book. And it's funny because once I published, I thought I'm going to republish and I'm going to change stuff. And now I stopped. I'm actually not doing that. I'm doing different projects, different amazing projects that I have, and I'm not thinking about it. And if you I know you have a copy of it, if you read it, you might not see the errors. I do, like maybe I'm missing a comma here or whatnot. And this is the same anxiety that I hear women coming to me and saying, hey, about box 3 in the Netherlands, which is the tax that we get on or our wealth
Yeah.
tax. That's going to change in 2028. I'm not going to be able to invest in the stock market, and then it's analysis paralysis, procrastination, and then they're missing on maybe 2 more years of investing in the market. It might not happen, right? But it's the same as people coming to me and being like, I still haven't opened my trading account. I have enough money to invest, but I'm still looking whether this A or B or C is better. And then, this is what we call the €3 question. So you're asking me which trading platform is better, less commissions and all that. But that's the $3 question. Why don't you ask me the bigger question? So I
And
think
what is the
maybe,
bigger question?
so like, should I buy a house? Should I, big
Should I
investments?
invest in? Yeah. Should I invest in?
Why should I rent? Those are the big things in life that are really going to make an impact. Not what trading platform to use or whether box three. I mean, if you look at the US tax system, it's much worse than the box three is at the moment for if you invest in stocks, right? So the capital gains. So yeah, I think, and also I think people also make assumptions like, oh, I will be taxed here and there without the information, and then they don't act. Because it's actually safer to not act and keep thinking than to act, because you might make a mistake. And then we are perfect. We are taught as children to be perfect and good and quiet and proper. And
Is
that's
that
what's,
more what girls are taught versus what, because men are taught to make their hands dirty and to take risk and be bold and
yes. And there's data about that, right? Like the, and I even have biases that way. I have a boy and a girl. So then if my son is like in the top and then he might fall, perhaps I wasn't as careful. But if my daughter's there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so careful. But we have to let them go down. We have to let them take more risk. And I think we're not doing that from an early age.
going back to the to what you just said about the perfect decision and waiting for that moment. Um, how can people get to the act modus, let's say? So they are procrastinating, they are collecting data, money is collecting dust. Everyone is waiting for that perfect moment, whether it's to fundraise, build a product, launch a business, whatever. How do we move? What do we need to change? What did you change?
Yeah. And I think so it's from overthinking to action, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what you're referring to. And it's a little bit like I just started doing Pilates, and then the first class is really hard. And then you're like, I don't want to do this. And then you go to a second class. So I think it's about starting small and making small decisions instead of trying to figure out everything from the beginning. Because then I feel that maybe if you're trying to figure out everything from the beginning, um, then you don't act, but just really starting. And even starting with one account, opening a trading account, maybe trading, even if it's €500 on the stock, even if that's not the right decision, even losing a little bit.
Yeah.
So I made big mistakes financially in my life, which actually brought me to where I'm now. I invested in 2 mining stocks that my colleague at work told me to do
Mm-hmm.
against my side. So that was a fear and greed thing. I knew better than to do that, but I did it because I felt that maybe I could then make enough money, have like a lot of money that I could buy a property in London to live in. And then I actually lost 96% of my investment. But that taught me something. So it was from 10,000 to losing 96. It was
Yeah.
my bonus, £10,000. And I mean, I'm kind of glad I did it. It sucks because that's a lot of money, and compound, that would be a lot of money now. But it kind of taught me, the psychology is very strong. And also sometimes you just have to make mistakes, and sometimes you just have to do things, and then you just adjust from there.
Yeah, that and also going back to the book launch story you told us, setting a deadline. This is when I get it done.
That's it.
It also prevents, by the way, and that's my own experience with building fundingcoach.ai. At some point, it gets so big in your head in terms of like, oh, and I have to add this feature and that feature. Oh, and this guest told me this, and oh, how do I build that in? And it needs to be in there before the launch. And at some point, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna press publish.
Yeah.
And then you literally put for a minute put my fingers in my ears, like, okay,
Go for a walk without your phone.
let's hope nobody starts calling, which obviously didn't happen because I
Funny, huh?
gave like no publicity to it at first.
Funny how it goes. And
Yeah,
now you're fine with it.
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and the interesting part is that I have made more progress in the last couple of weeks since I published it. I made more progress on building the rest of the app.
Interesting.
There are still a lot of things that do need to be built there. Made more progress than I made before because it's sort of indeed analysis paralysis that you get into.
And you're your biggest critic, right? And then you're like, it's missing a comma and the spacing is not right. And then you don't publish. And then it becomes a book that you write in 5 years, or it becomes an app that you are writing in 5 years. And then, yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, for the writing, I sort of got over that. It's actually the same for publishing videos. When one of my business coaches told me, well, the first 1,000 videos or messages won't matter. They just won't matter because people will not look at them.
Yeah, interesting.
So that sort of de-risked the whole thing for me. I want to wrap up the perfectionism and move to the Ada Invest.
Oh, yeah.
Because Ada Invest is a platform where you combine the coaching, where you combine actual also physical meetings. I saw dinners on your website, which I think is like really cool. But you're also an angel investor.
Yeah.
And now going back to investing, it is mostly framed as a spreadsheet and returns focused. But you frame it as agency, creating agency. How is investing also a form of reclaiming power?
Yeah. I mean, so agency is the difference between your life happening to you and you happening to your life. So I believe that most women have been taught to think about money defensively,
Mhm.
and to manage carefully and save it, don't lose it. But agency is really an intentional relationship with money. It means your money is working towards something you have decided on, right? So when you invest, you stop being entirely dependent on one income source, one employer, one relationship, but you are becoming participant in the economy rather than just a recipient of it, right? So and it's interesting. I think women who invest think differently about their own worth. They can negotiate differently because they believe, it's also the journey, right? It's the journey that to make them have money is what makes them stronger, right? It's not just getting it. And you see that with people that have inherited money a lot. They're not necessarily happier. It's the journey that makes you happy, right? Or is the journey that makes you that proclaims your agency. So yeah, they negotiate differently. They leave things that aren't working, and they build what they actually want to build, right?
You also talk about wealth as freedom instead of accumulation. And we talked about that as earlier as well. When should women start thinking that way? So, is there a specific point in time in their careers that you would recommend people start thinking about money, not in the accumulation phase, which at some point it does need to happen, but more as a freedom thing? Is that all the way from the start, or is that something that can grow later?
Well, okay, so you're saying whether we need to start thinking about investing rather than just saving money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're young, younger, let's say in your 20s or 30s, you want to accumulate money and you could do it through a pension fund.
Mhm.
So a pension through your employer, or if you're self-employed, you should have a pension yourself,
Mhm.
which is tax efficient, because the sooner you start investing in that money, it's in a pension and I know you can't get it until later. the sooner time can compound that money. What it means is that the interest on that money will start growing, and then and it's this cumulative effect, and it's a little bit like like a snowball that falls from the mountain, becomes bigger and bigger. So I think in the 20s or 30s, it's important that you do that. The problem is when you are in your 40s and 50s and you haven't accumulated anything yet.
Yeah.
Because the time that you have, the time horizon is quite short after that. So I think the sooner you start accumulating, the better. But there's also, so for me, I'm in my 40s. I don't necessarily need to accumulate. I mean, of course, everyone wants to accumulate, but I could spend more than accumulate in a way, because I already have my pensions building, and they are building whilst I'm sleeping. If I'm working or not, they're still building, and I've built those pensions in my corporate life. So even that brings me to that question that you said, is it better to start your own thing later in life? And perhaps it's quite nice, because you perhaps have some money already saving and accumulating, and then you don't have to accumulate so much later in life. Is that answer your question?
Yeah, in part.
But freedom, I think you were looking for freedom as well.
So when do we shift that focus from accumulation to freedom?
I wish I had think about freedom in my early 20s, but I didn't. So I only thought about freedom, let's say, my late 30s. I think you should think about it early on, because then you can create a better plan of how much do I need to accumulate in order to have that freedom, or can I already have freedom in my 20s? And I think you can. You can be more flexible in your life. I thought about freedom too late, but I talked to women, let's say in their mid 30s, that have never thought about freedom, and I'm introducing that idea to them, and they're liking it. They're seeing it in the book as well. And we're creating a program where it says, okay, you are 35 now, but you could retire at 45 if you keep doing this, or if you do this more of. And that is kind of let's say, a mental shift, because it's not something, it's also unlearning stuff. It's the same as the myth of buying a house versus renting. We have been told, and we have seen our parents retire not my father because he lost his job, but we've seen our parents retire 65, and then, that's how it was. And we need to just unlearn that. And I guess we are already unlearning it, but I am helping other women unlearn that, because it's simply,
Is that something that sort of that shift? Is that something that requires a bit of life experience, you think?
I don't necessarily think so. I think it just requires thinking differently, and also having the examples. And this is again why I wanted to write this book, is because a lot of the examples I see out there of people that have the freedom are men, and then they're US people, and everything is US centric. And I wrote the book that I wish a woman like me would have before. And so I think we need to have more role models that look more like us, let's say, if women are listening to the podcast. But I think freedom is, about unlearning and about education. But I don't think it has to do so much with experience. Yeah. Do you see it differently?
I think there's a lot of importance for role models, to be honest. I do also think that it's sort of, yes, I think it does to some extent require life experience.
Yeah.
It's just some things you cannot comprehend when you're young.
Yeah.
You're not busy with that. And even if you talk about accumulating wealth, for many young people, they are really focused on living experiences, so living now, which is also in part a good thing. Don't get me wrong.
But I think you can do both.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the freedom also comes from being able not only to do that now, but also to do that later.
Yeah. But I think you can do both as well. And
Yeah. So do you think when women start to think about, let's say, start to invest either in the stock market or later as an angel investor, or when founders start to pay it forward, that this changes what gets built?
yeah, and I think it actually changes everything, right? Like founders who understand their own money scripts
Huh?
make better decisions under pressure. That's definitely something to think about. And also investors who don't need validation from a deal size, let's say, make bolder bets. Okay, I don't need this. I can take more risk. And I also think that the women who currently sit out of those conversations because they don't feel financially confident enough to be in the room should be in the room or would be in the room. Um, and that really changes the questions being asked and the problems being funded. So yeah, I think it is all to do with the mindset, the psychology. But yeah, if that changed, it would be everyone would really benefit. The economy would really benefit on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can men contribute to that shift?
How can men contribute to that shift? Well, understanding their own biases. So perhaps I'm just wanting to fund businesses where the CEO looks like me, sounds like me, has been in the same kind of networking events that
Huh?
I go to. So yeah, just really working on their own biases. And I mean, there's studies that prove that two similar CVs with the same qualifications, we think the one that is named John versus, I don't know, Stephanie,
Mary? Yeah.
Mary is better, or they're better in math, or they're better in finance than Mary. And I think there needs to be a lot of education on those biases, right?
Okay. So get the education on the biases.
For
Cool.
sure.
I want to wrap up.
Yep.
I'm building an AI app. We just touched on it, a funding coach to help female founders navigate that bias and make stronger funding decisions by linking them also to investors. If there's one lesson that I could embed from your book, Still Thinking Act, what would that be?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can teach the AI app
Hmm?
is to ask one question before anything else. And that would be, what is the number you actually want as a founder? What do you want? Not the number you think you can justify or you can get. What do you want? And yeah, not the number that they'll say yes to, or but
Mm-hmm.
the number that you need and want. Most women have never been asked that question directly or cleanly, and everything you build from there is either honest or it isn't. So I think that would be a really important one. And yeah, so
Yeah, so
that could be
really
one.
also really challenge the founder on, is this what you really want versus what you can substantiate or what you think you can substantiate.
Yeah, and also teach them that the goal of fundraising is not just the money, but that
Uh,
the money is a tool, and that the goal is agency and the ability to build what she actually wants to build on her own terms. And I think if a founder understands that, they're going to negotiate differently. They're going to negotiate better, choose investors differently. And also important is to know when to walk away. So having, I don't know if you have that in the app or not, but
I
um,
haven't thought of it this way, but I think it's like really powerful to
yeah,
really also that money is a tool, but also is a way to claim your or to get your own agency on building your business on your terms. So it shifts the power dynamics also quite a bit, because
yeah,
then you're asking not for, it takes it out of the begging, let's say, and puts it into, hey, I need this money. This is how I'm going to pay you back, but also comes from a place of strength and conviction.
This gets me thinking, because I'm mentoring women myself, and it's not normally a knowledge problem. I mentor women that are much more educated than I am, highly educated executives, and it's a problem of doing it and having someone that is accountable and telling you what to do, and it's not necessarily a knowledge problem. So, um, and giving them a reality check, So anyway, I see the power of your AI funding coach. I'm very intrigued about it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed this conversation. If people would like to learn more about you, Anna, or about Ada Invest, or about your book, Still Thinking, Act, where can they learn more?
Yeah, I think the next step is if you can order my book, and it's Still Thinking, Act, Smarter Money for Women. This is on Amazon now, but it will be soon, and Amazon globally, it will be soon on my website. So I'm going to be printing it and publishing, or just sending it through a different publisher. And also, they want to come to any of my webinars. I do once a month an online free webinar. Find me on LinkedIn. And it's fun. We use what we call the wealth framework on those webinars, and it's or be part of my community dinners when I do those. So yeah.
That sounds like a great place to close. Anna Herrero-Wallace, thank you very much for an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, as always, keep being awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to episode 157 of Women Disrupting Tech, titled How Female Founders Build Financial Independence Before the Exit with Anna Herrero-Wallace. Anna and I hope you found our conversation as insightful and informative as we intended it to be, and if you have any questions for Anna, please leave them in the comment section on Spotify, YouTube and/or Apple Podcasts. I do read all the comments and I'll make sure you get an answer. If you want to connect with Anna or learn more about her platform Ada Invest, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog and on my Substack via the links in the caption. There you can also find links to Anna's book Still Thinking, Act, and to my new fundingcoach.ai tool. If you found this episode useful, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or YouTube. And if you don't follow us yet, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Every week, you'll hear how another founder or investor is working to close the funding gap one conversation at a time. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, as always, keep being awesome.